Hello hamsters, and welcome back to my kitchen. I'm making some more videos to show you some more art techniques, and the one I want to show you today is called 1-point perspective. So I'm just going to write that on the top of my paper. Derspective? No, perspective. This is what happens when I'm trying to think about what to say next while I'm trying to write what I just said. My brain does not want to do two things at once. Now, the camera's probably going to wobble back and forth a little bit as I'm doing this because I don't know if you can see, but it's connected to the top of my drawing board. I don't really have a better setup right now. And you might be like, Basine, why are you using a drawing board at your house? And that's because I don't really have a good table to draw on. This table has a leaf, so there's a line here, and if I tried to draw, that line would show up in my drawings. And I don't have a better, bigger table to draw on at my house, so I have a nice big drawing board that I got in college, and when I want to draw, I just take that out, and it can be in my lap in the backyard, or in the office, or in my kitchen, and I can draw pretty much anywhere. So if you're a person who loves to draw, you might want to spend a little money to get yourself a drawing board because it can really help you out in a lot of situations. You can even take it with you if you were going camping or on a trip. So back to 1-point perspective. Before I show you how to do this, I just want to show you what I've got kind of in my setup. I've got a pencil. Okay, this is a regular 2B, nothing too special about it. It is sharp. I just sharpened it. Always good to have a sharpened pencil when we're doing something detailed like this. I have got a beautiful, well, it's not so beautiful anymore. It has a lot of charcoal on it. But I've got an art gum eraser for when I make mistakes, because that's gonna happen. It already did. And I've got my beautiful Italian pencil sharpener. This really did come from Italy. It's from a company called Fabriano. They make quite fancy art supplies. They're very, very good. You can see it's got charcoal in it too. And the cool thing about this pencil sharpener is it has a zillion different sizes for all different tools, like regular pencils and then the bigger charcoal pencils. And then some of our more special art supplies can even get like really, really big. So this is cool. We have regular pencil sharpeners in our classroom now. They're little red ones. But as you know, we spent the first month of school with no pencil sharpeners. So if you guys stick those in your portfolios, or carry them away to other classes, we're going to be in the same situation where we have no pencil sharpeners. And this time, there won't be any more coming because the supply money is spent. So please make sure those stay in our classroom. Now, I'm going to use a regular 2B pencil, but some of you really love a mechanical pencil. And I've told you before, don't use that for drawing when we're shading. It's not a great tool. However, today we're going to be doing perspective, which is a more technical drawing. This is a perfect pencil for a technical drawing. If you love using mechanical pencil, today is your day. I'm going to stick with my 2B because I tend to press really hard with my mechanical pencil and break it sometimes. So I've got my eraser, I've got my pencils, I've got a pencil sharpener in case I need it, and I just have some scratch paper. These are like insurance disclosures. Ooh, how exciting. So you know where to get scratch paper. There's in 2 different places in the room. I'm sure that you are all set up and ready to go. So the other thing I would have is a ruler, but I can't find my ruler. And since I'm not actually going to be measuring anything today, it's okay if I just have something that has a straight edge. So this is, it might be a little hard to see because it's clear, but this is a triangle that's used for drawing architectural drawings and engineering drawings. Because a long, long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, I studied engineering. I don't study it anymore. I'm not an engineer, but I did keep my tools. So the nice thing about this triangle is it reaches all the way across my paper, and that's what we need your ruler to do. So you might be like, Miss Eden, what even is perspective? Well, if you've ever looked at a drawing or a painting by our really old Ninja Turtle artists, Leonardo, Michelangelo, Raphael, and you've wondered, oh my God, how did they get that so realistic? How could I ever do that? I couldn't do that. Oh, I'm terrible. And then you tried to walk out of art class, but I made you stay. The truth is, they cheated. Okay, maybe they didn't cheat. They used their resources. But they had all kinds of tools and tricks to help them make things really realistic. They invented something that was very much like the first camera and the first projector to help them trace accurately. And they used math to help them figure out how to make things look three-dimensional. So 1 point perspective, we're going to add to this note, is a type of linear perspective. And you might notice one of our elements of art words in there. Linear has a base of the word line, and that just means that we are using lines to help us make things look three-dimensional. This is a mathematical way of approaching three-dimensional artwork. And hopefully through the magic of television, I've put some examples up that show you linear perspective on your screen. So I'm going to show you the steps. And there's something I want to say before we start. Even if you don't understand how this works, if you feel very, very confused, if you follow the steps, it will still come out right. So there's a thing about brains, and when you're 13 or 14, you get the ability to think abstractly, which is what we need to be able to do to see this perspective. So some of us are already going to be there and we'll be able to see it, and some of us, our brain just hasn't quite gotten there yet. It will. So if you can't see it, just follow the steps. It's going to be okay. Just trust me. And trust Miss Lopin, who is there helping you. All right. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make what's called a horizon line. I'm going to show you how to make your name in block letters using 1 point perspective. So I'm actually going to put my horizon line pretty high up on the page. I want it pretty straight, but I'm not being too picky. It looks pretty straight, so I'm just going to draw that line all the way across. And I'm going to label it. And you're going to be like, I don't want to label it. That's extra writing. I don't like doing extra writing. But I want you to label it. And it's not just because I love making you do work. That's only a small part of it. It's actually because of those darn scientists again. So they did some research, and what they found out is the best way for a person to learn something and remember it is to teach someone else. Now, we can't teach things we haven't learned yet. So what can we do when we're just starting out to help us remember? Well, it turns out just listening to me talk about this is not great. You're not going to remember it if you just listen to me talk. And if I give you a handout where I've written everything down and you just read it, that's not that great either. You're probably not going to remember that scientifically. But if you write it with your own hand, because that requires work and it requires you to think, it's that uncomfortableness that you feel, you're much, much more likely to remember it. And that's why I want you to write 1 point perspective, linear perspective, and horizon line, because it's gonna help you remember. And that's what this is all about. That's the goal, boys and girls. So the cool thing about linear perspective, 1 point perspective, is you can make things look three-dimensional and they start to look a little more realistic. So you can make really awesome block letters, and you can have some really cool kind of optical effects that mess with your eyes. The less cool thing about linear perspective is when you get into more complicated artwork, like if you start trying to do a city. It starts to look a little bit less real, because in real life, we can see from more than one perspective at a time, most of the time. So what I'm doing right now is I am drawing my name in a big block outline. And you know, I just started this, but it occurs to me as I'm drawing that you might not know how to do this. So let me back up the truck and show you how. So, oh my gosh, it's my first name. I'm going to switch to another piece of paper, well, not that one, for a minute and show you how to do this. So let's say that this time I was going to do my last name, Eden. If you can draw parallel lines, you can draw block letters. And remember, our parallel lines are the ones that are always side by side. They never meet. So an easy way to do this is to just draw out, nice and big, the word that you want to do in block letters. And then go through and add some parallel lines. And it's okay if sometimes we have this overlapping that looks a little bit ugly. We're going to fix that later. And maybe you don't think it looks ugly. Maybe you're like, oh, that is awesome and I love it. And if that's you, you do you and you keep it, and we will love your art, boo. So you might have something that looks like this, but your name, not my name. So go through and close off the ends. And if you were looking at this and you're like, that looks messy and I don't like it, then go through and erase the messy bits. That's okay too. It's okay to feel that way. You know, I might actually switch to my mechanical pencil here because the eraser is a little bit more precise for me. Ooh, but I can see it's a very smudgy eraser. The forever struggle. Usually white erasers are good, but the erasers that come with pencils are often really cheap and they make things, you know, smudgy and messy, and then we're unhappy. So something like this. You have your name, but it's in sort of a block outline. Now, magic of television, I'm going back to my first paper. So I have a horizon line. And you might remember that our horizon is where the sky meets the land or the sea. That's really important with perspective. Ooh, I just heard my dog bark and I totally forgot what I was saying. So it's where the sky meets the land and the sea. So on our horizon line, somewhere on here, we're going to put what's called a vanishing point. And I'm going to do mine right here in the middle. So this is going to be a dot. I made mine big so you can see it, but you actually want it pretty small. You want it big enough so you can find it easily, but as small as it can be where you can still find it. And I'm going to label that my vanishing point. And what that means is, if this was 3D and I was looking at it, if these were buildings that went on to infinity, at the vanishing point is where, even though they're still there and they're still going on, I can't see them anymore. All right, so hopefully you've got your paper all set up, you've got your labels on there, you've got your name ready to go. If not, that's the beauty of having a video. Slow me down, you know, use the settings to slow me down. Doors sound like this. Or back the video up. Or if I'm going too slow, speed me up. You know, you have the control. So I'm going to take my straight edge. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go from a corner to my vanishing point. This is the reason we want it pretty small. Ooh, I kind of missed my target. I'm going to try again. The reason we want it small is because the smaller it is, the better our end result is going to look. Everything's going to be going to the same place. If we make it too big, things get a little wobbly and it doesn't look as nice. So I'm going from my corner of my K to the vanishing point. And I'll go from the end of my Y to this vanishing point. Now the cool thing about one-point perspective is it's really easy to change the effects that you can get. So when I finish this, we're going to see the letters stretching out up and back. But if I moved my horizon line down, we could have that going down. If I move my vanishing point over, we can have it going over. So just by moving our horizon line, moving our vanishing point, we can get a lot of different effects. So now, and I'm probably going to speed this up when you're watching me, now I'm just going to connect all the corners at the tops of my letters to my vanishing point. So you go ahead and do the same, and I'll trust that you can do that. And if you're feeling like, oh my gosh, I feel so lost, I'm so confused, I don't know what to do, you know what to do. Raise your hand and ask me or Miss Lopin for some help. Or if you're working on this all alone, at home, outside of class, back the video up. Boy, I wish I had my ruler because this would actually be easier with my ruler. It's actually tricking my eye a little bit that it's clear. Now I've gotten to a tricky part in my letters. K's are easy because they have corners at the top. R is tough because it's round. There's no corner here. So actually, instead of going from where a corner might be, I'm going to go to the point where it turns. So it's gone as far this way as it's going to go. Now it's turning back. So I'm going to connect from that to my vanishing point. And I'm going to continue with my eye, corner to vanishing point. And there are some really cool things you can do with 1-point perspective. You know, we can do lettering like we're doing now. You can make like a hallway that looks like it's stretching back forever. If you like to watch scary movies, if you've seen The Shining, Stanley Kubrick loves to create a sense of 1-point perspective. So there's a sense of this long enclosed space. So that's a way it's sometimes used in video art. Sometimes they can give people the creeps or make them feel a little claustrophobic. A lot of times in comic books, you'll see 1-point perspective creating this sort of epic lettering or epic feeling of space. And this is a great way for us to use that element of space and create space in our drawings. More than just holes and things, now we have space backward and forward, or at least the illusion. So now I've got all the tops of my letters connected. This is where things can get a little bit trickier. Now I have to think a little bit. Before I was just sort of following steps. Now I've got to kind of bring my brain into it. My letters are going back this way. Anywhere that I can see the sides of my letters, the top or the side, I also need to connect that to the vanishing point. So for example, on this bottom leg of my K, I'm going to connect that to the vanishing point using my straight edge, my triangle. But when I got to the R, I stopped. I didn't draw over it because that's just going to make my drawing messy when I have to do a lot of erasing later. And it just saves me a little work, doesn't it? I don't have to draw as much. You can see that one got a little bit crooked. I need to get myself a nice metal ruler. I just have a plastic one and I kind of cut it a little bit with the X-Acto knife when I was doing collage, and hot mess. Now the other thing I'm noticing about my K, and this will be different depending on the letters in your name, is there's a bend here. There's a little corner. And because that's a corner and because I should be able to see it, I'm also going to connect that to my vanishing point. And you might be like, Miss Eden, this is starting to be a lot of lines and I'm feeling confused. And that's fair. Maybe we should have started with boxes, but I think boxes are maybe like a little boring. At least doing it this way, we have something that might look cool. Like maybe you want to draw it on your folder or on the cover of one of your books. You know, something you'd want to show somebody, put it on your Instagram. So in my R, I looked at this corner and I connected it. And I looked at this bottom corner and I connected that. Now I'm ready for my I, and I'm actually wondering if I ran into a little trouble, like if this is going to overlap, but I don't think it will. So again, I'm just going from my corner to my vanishing point. I think the lucky thing is that you guys are really, really a video generation, and so I think you might find it actually easier to learn from a video than even from me doing a demonstration in class. Now here's another interesting thing about this eye. If it was over here, I would want to go from my corners to the vanishing point. And if it was over there, I'd want to go from my corners to the vanishing point. But because it's in the middle, almost in front of my vanishing point, I'm going to see a little bit there, and that's it. Now here, S is like the toughest letter no matter what. It's hard to draw, it's hard to connect, you know, but we're tough, we can handle it. We're gonna soldier through. So again, just like with my R, where I went from the bend, I'm gonna find the bend here, and I feel like it's there. So I'm gonna connect to my vanishing point. And you might see, well, Missine, that looks like that is going through your letter a little bit. And it is, so I'm just not gonna draw where it's going through my letter. Then the bottom's easier, I get to go from actual corners. And if any of you have like a G in your name, you know, you're probably gonna have a lot of fun with this. I'm glad actually that I used my first name because my last name is quite easy. It's mostly square letters. This gives me a chance to show you some more difficult letters. All right. And you know, it's not perfect. I drew that line twice and now it's all thick, but it looks pretty good. We're just learning. So I'm gonna go for my corners on my T. T is a nice, easy letter. And now, you may have noticed, once I passed this vanishing point, on the left-hand side, I was seeing the right side of my letters. In the middle, it's pretty much just going straight. Now that I'm on the right-hand side of my letters, I'm seeing the left-hand side going to the vanishing point. Last letter, we're almost there. And then we get to cut these letters off so they don't go to infinity. And they'll just look like nice block letters. You might have just heard the door open. Maybe you hear the floor creaking. That's Mr. Eden on the scene. Say hi, Mr. Eden.
Hi, Mr. Eden.
He's clever like you guys. Getting a beverage. I wish I had a beverage. All right, so right now we've got these letters stretching onto infinity. And if you're like, Miss Anne, you're going too fast, wait for me, because your name is like Francesca or something with a lot of letters in it, it's okay. All right, hamsters, this is what yours might look like in the end. And if you're like, wait, Miss Eden, this is like the meme where they're like, draw an owl, draw a circle, draw an oval, draw the rest of the owl. You are right. So when I watched the first part of the video, I realized that my camera had cut off at about 21 minutes and not recorded the end where I showed you how to make your letters short so they don't keep going to infinity. I had just like happily gone on and colored this in and got it all like nice and beautiful. And I was like, great, we're done. But I want you to know how to cut those letters off. So I'm gonna show you now. But this is how my first one wound up. And I just want to point out something I did with the coloring. So I used rainbow colors on the front. And then on the back, I imagined what's called a light source. So I'm going to draw a very fancy little sun right here for you. I'm going to label it. And having an idea of your light source, so where light is coming from as it's hitting your drawing, is going to make your drawings really, really nice in the future. It's a great tool to have under your belt. If you wear a tool belt. If not, it's just in your mental tool bag. All right, I'm not coloring the sun in yellow. I can't find my yellow. I'm hearing big wheels outside. Things are crazy at the Eden house. All this means is I'm thinking about where my light is coming from as it's hitting these. And how that affects my coloring is anything on the top, I colored in with a light value, right? This is a light gray. Anything that was on the side where some light might be getting to it, I actually imagined my sun right here in the center. Anything that was on the side is a little darker. And then anything that was underneath, so blocked from getting any light on it really, is the darkest of all. And that just helps give even more a sense of this being three-dimensional with value. So drawing three-dimensional art involves a lot of things. It can involve creating a sense of perspective with linear perspective or atmospheric perspective, which we'll learn about later. It involves using value to add shading, so we get a sense of what light is hitting and what it's not hitting, and how those shapes are curving in space or extending in space, because some of these are not curvy shapes. And it involves an idea of where is my light coming from? How is light hitting this? Because that lets me understand as I'm looking at it, oh, this is the top, and the light is up here because it's lighter. And this is the bottom, and not as much light is getting there because it's darker. So those are all the things that I'm sort of considering as I'm making this, and that's how I get to something that looks really nice and satisfying as a finished result if I'm making three-dimensional art. So let's talk about how to cut your letters off so they don't just stretch to infinity forever. So once I finished out what happened with once I figured out what happened with my first video, I made another little example really quick to show you with. So this time I use my last name. And again, I have my horizon line and my vanishing point. And I use this example as a chance to show you what happens when you change where your horizon line and your vanishing point are. So before, my horizon line was above my letters, and so my letters were stretching back to it. Now my horizon line is below my letters, so my letters are stretching down toward it. Before my vanishing point was in the middle, so my letters kind of went in a triangular shape toward that. But now I've moved my vanishing point to the left, so it's stretching down and to the left. So you can have a really different effect, depending on where you move those things to. So you might like how this looks. You might like how it like stretches to this tiny little point, and maybe you imagine that's like, I don't know, a projector from an alien spaceship or something, and you're like, I dig it. But if you want these to be a little bit shorter, all we gotta do is we're gonna start with a straight line. So I'm just gonna use a line parallel to my horizon line, and I'm gonna draw it all the way across, because I've got an eraser, so I can fix anything that I'm not happy with. The next thing I've got to do is I've got to look at the bottoms of my letters. So here, this is straight, this is straight. I want this to be parallel to the bottom of the letter. Now it doesn't work so well with my D. My D is curved actually. So I'm actually going to curve the end of that one a little bit. And if you're feeling like there's a lot of lines here and you're confused, that's fair. Just take your time. And if you erase something that is not the thing you wanted to erase on accident, just draw it back in. So I'm going to back up a little bit to my E. So the bottom is straight, but I can also see the left side, and the left side is straight, but it's vertical instead of horizontal. So I'm going to draw in a vertical line. I could use my straight edge if I want that to be perfectly straight. If I'm very confident or I don't care that much, I can freehand it. On my D, again, I have a vertical straight line. So I'm going to draw that right there. And now I can do a little bit of erasing. So I can erase that extra bit, and I can erase the pieces going to the vanishing point over here. And actually, I can erase everything going to the vanishing point below my line. And if I wasn't going to do anything else in perspective, I could even erase my horizon line and erase my vanishing point so that nobody would know how I did this, and they would just be super impressed and think I was an art genius forever and ever. Unless they also know how to do first point perspective. Now there's a danger there, because if I was going to draw, let's say I was drawing like a city and I was going to do a whole bunch of buildings that had 1 point perspective. If I erase my horizon line and my vanishing point before I'm finished and I draw them back in a different spot, it's gonna mess up my perspective. Everything's gonna look off and kind of bother people when they're looking at it, and they might not even be able to figure out why, but they'll just feel bothered. So I keep going along. The bottom of my E is flat, the bottom of my E is flat, the side is straight up and down. So I go from that corner where the bottom meets the corner, I'm going straight up and down, and I erase that extra bit in the middle. The bottom of my N is flat, 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 flat. The side is straight up and down. And then this is a little tricky. So I have the diagonal line of my N right here, and I want to go parallel. So I want to use that same angle and just move it on down. So this is actually going to be at a little bit of an angle. And then I'm going to erase my extra bits. And gosh, I'm really sorry my video cut off, guys, because I think it would have helped you to see some of these trickier letters with my first name. So at this point I'd be done and I could color it in and be like, sweet, I am an art master. But I wish I could have shown you some of these trickier letters cutting them off. So I'll just point out a couple things. Like with the R, how we had to follow the curve. And the S, we had to follow the curve. And then with the S, we can also see the edge of this bottom part here. So in the back, I followed the curve, and then we have the angle of the bottom part. And you might notice I did the angle of the bottom a little bit lower than the curve. And that's because at the front, it's a little bit lower. The round part of the S sticks out a little bit further. And it's those little details that really make noticing them and bringing them through that can really make your art look kind of next level. And then with our K and with our Y, there were corners in the letter that we could see on the side. So I needed to connect those to the back. And with the K, we could see that at the back end. So again, I took that same angle, parallel, and drew that in. So we're at a fine-tuning point where you're going to be figuring out how to get your letters to look just right. It's going to take a little time. You might want to ask for some help from someone at your table or from Miss Lopin or me if I'm there. You might want to back up or even check out another YouTube video to see if the specific letter that you need is there. But this is as far as we're going to go in 1-point perspective today. Next time we'll talk about 2-point perspective, and eventually we'll talk about atmospheric perspective. We're not going to go into 3, 4, or 5-point perspective in class, so I'm not going to teach it to you specifically. But if you really love this and you love how it looks, it's worth looking up some videos and giving it a try because you can get some really cool effects. So I hope if you guys have questions that you'll ask me. You could even leave a comment, and if I see it, I will answer it in the comments. And I hope this was helpful for you, and I'll see you in class. Bye.